Chapter 5, The Temple of the Soul. "Tonight you are going to Ram," my colleague said in an orderly tone after listening to my retelling of the dream. "No," I objected. "I am invited to the Beaumont to cast spells tonight." "You won't be casting any spells tonight. You need to get to know Ram. She comes twice a year for a week seminar. I just found out yesterday that she is here now." Ram, Raisa Akhmatovna Mansurova, sat in the center of the huge hall, talking about the amazing capabilities of everyone. A dazzling emanation along the contour of her earthly body seemed even to be real fire. We studied for 5 hours in the evening on weekdays and all day long on Saturday and Sunday. During the week of the seminar, I had the opportunity to talk privately with the teacher several times. She read my manuscripts, looked in my future and saw the light there. Ram taught us a lot, but I liked most meditating to music combined with mantras recorded during her expedition to Tibet. I closed my eyes. Having ceased to feel my physical body, I found myself in a picturesque place in the mountains, in a meadow with a babbling brook. On the right, there were ordinary mountains that I had seen in Tibet several years before in reality. To the left, there was an abyss, with other mountains behind, of another Tibet, unknown to me. Somewhere in the distance, a small monastery rose on the top of a mountain to the right. The air took on blurry contours. Suddenly I felt that I was about to see my mother. Mom had long been very, very far away, and it was difficult for her to gather herself into the earthly image that would forever remain in my memory, but I would still recognize her from 1,000 foggy outlines. Being as transparent as she was, I realized that we could neither hug in an earthly way nor speak in words. My physical body was in the hall at Ram Seminar. I could look at me in the hall from there and move consciousness into it, observing me in the mountains from the side. It was a game of instant movement, and I liked it. I was incredibly happy to see my mother. We were walking there, at the slightly open door where ordinary and other mountains coexisted, and communicating in silence. I did not even formulate phrases mentally, because only feelings remained, and everything else was unnecessary. Mom led me to the monastery on the mountain, where the fire was burning. Although perhaps I mistook for it a huge vat with incense, shrouded in the misty haze from which our bodies, my mother's and mine, were woven there. It was funny, we were transparent, while the monks were dense, wearing real clothes. It was strange that they did not pay much attention to us, just glanced at us briefly and continued their business. After some time, the monks began to walk clockwise around the vat with incense or a fire emanating smoke, dancing, chanting mantras and striking musical instruments similar to tambourines. Mom invited me to dance with them. I had a strange feeling of joy and absolute peace dancing with my mother and the monks, who looked at me as if my appearance there was completely natural. Mom called me to the abyss, a bottomless one. I had once climbed mountains higher than 5,000 meters, but at that moment we were at an altitude of hundreds of thousands kilometers above sea level or Earth. Indescribably beautiful and majestic, I felt the Earth so far from there that I needed to fly to it, and for quite a long time. We stood on the highest mountain of the world, another world. The black mountains seemed to be monks' souls. The fiery red sky resembled a sunset, but the earthly sun was barely visible at the bottom of the abyss. There was nowhere to go higher. That was the highest sky, the sky of fire color. Mom wanted me to walk over the abyss. She took my hand. Although that was an illusion, I just felt her supporting me. I took my first step into the void. We walked with her through the fiery sky, like people walking through an autumn park. Then I realized it was time for my mother to leave, and her outline slowly dissolved, merging with so-called God. The last mantra sounded, and it seemed that all that fiery sky was contained in the single sound Om. The next day I found myself in the same meadow in the mountains. The level one found myself at the beginning of each meditation was below the level of the fiery sky, from where I returned to Earth. I knew in advance that my mother would not come and that I needed to talk to the monks. I moved to the left and discovered 108 springs with holy water, walked through them and went further, skirting the mountains. I saw the already familiar monastery in the distance, but the path ended at an abyss. I stopped in thoughts. Mountains surrounded me on all sides. A thin thread was stretched over the abyss. I suddenly felt someone approaching me from behind, turned around, finding myself with my back to the abyss, at the beginning of the thread leading to the monastery, and saw a smiling monk. He came so close that I instinctively took a step back on the thread. The monk continued to smile and hold me with his gaze so that I would not stumble, moving backwards, with my back to the monastery and my face to the monk. We walked slowly until I felt the ground under my feet. The monk pointed his hand in the direction of the fire, and I sat down nearby it. I asked him for help, telling him about my emptiness, but he smiled back. The rest of the monks appeared and began to dance around the fire. I approached each of them in turn and asked to help me, but they smiled and silently invited me to dance with them. I realized that it was time to return to Earth, and I found myself on that highest mountain where the sky was fiery red. I went into that sky until it all merged into the single sound Om. On the third day the monk met me at 108 Springs. I asked him for help again, but he silently smiled and showed the pool with holy water from the springs. I lay under the water with my eyes open, breathed and saw the smiling monk bending over me above the water surface. He did not allow me to leave the pool while the water cleansed my astral body. I relaxed, closed my eyes and flew in a fiery stream at a great speed. Then the monk made me understand that I was free, and I ran to the abyss over which the thread was stretched. The monk looked at me with a smile. He knew that I could easily get to the monastery without anyone's help. However, as soon as I set foot on the monastery grounds, I remembered the man who was not. I wanted to show him those magical places, so I returned back to the springs, imagined him as foggy as I was, standing at the edge of the abyss, took him by the hand and guided with my gaze. He looked into my eyes, and I smiled at him, just as the monk had smiled at me the day before. I led him to the monastery and again returned to those 108 springs to lead my son as well. The monk called me to the fire, and everything repeated. I danced with the monks, went to the top of the highest mountain to walk through the sky of fire color, and returned to Earth, when everything around me suddenly merged into the single sound Om. On the fourth day, each of the seminarians brought 4 bottles of champagne. We had to walk on broken glass. Many people ask why this is necessary, thinking that Ram teaches walking on glass only. Firstly, during the previous 3 days not a word was said about glass. Secondly, walking on broken glass 7 times was just a fragment of the seminar. The purpose of this action is to hack the program written in consciousness as impossible, forbidden. It does not happen like that. I won't succeed. People live according to the rules of the programs implanted in them, so they consider their problem insoluble. If the program is rewritten, hidden abilities wake up and help to find the right solution. Having created a small miracle by walking on broken glass without cutting heels, a person begins not only to believe in miracles, but also to know that one creates them oneself, with God's help, of course. Television arrived. The glass was divided into 2 piles. The seminarians who had already practiced walking on glass lined up to the place for the advanced people and started walking as if on a soft and fluffy carpet. I froze at the carpet for the newcomers. Ram said I would be the first to go. Looking at the fragment sticking out pointing upward, I could not believe that it was possible not to cut myself. Ram took me by the hand and asked to repeat just one phrase after her. I repeated and was sure that the teacher would not let go of my hand until I had walked the entire carpet, but Ram, slapping me on the butt, ordered go. I took the first step. To be honest, I am hypersensitive and, when going to the sea on vacation, I choose a sandy beach or pebbles, since it's easier for me to learn to fly than to walk on stones with bare heels. That day I heard the glass crunching beneath me, digging into my heels, but felt no pain at all. I reached a safe land unharmed. The procedure should be repeated at least 7 times. All the newcomers cautiously moved to the carpet for the advanced people. I am no longer here. You can do everything yourself. Ram smiled. I walked and walked on the glass. When they were taking my photo, a seminarian shouted, "Alice, show the swallow." I had to jump on one leg on the broken glass to keep the swallow balanced until the next click of the camera because of the pauses between shots. During one walk in a bad mood, having taken the first step, I felt a sharp pain in my left heel. The rug seemed to be about to turn from green to red. I froze like a one-legged heron so that I could re-encode myself before landing my second heel on the glass. Afterwards we took off our clothes to the waist and lay down on the glass with our bare backs, including necks and heads. Ram pressed everyone into the carpet with all her might, turning one's body on all sides, and did other exercises so that the glass would merge as much as possible with the naked upper body. The lying person rose not alone, but together with the pieces of glass sticking out from his back, like the needles of a hedgehog. Ram took out those needles, that left indentations, as from driven nails, but no blood, no cuttings of the skin on the back. Based on the color of certain areas of the back, Ram immediately told what health problems the person had. Late in the evening we played a 15-minute game called Tell Someone You Don't Know About Something You Don't Know. Ram asked each of us to come up to 3 or 4 seminarians to whom we would be drawn and say the first thing that would come to mind. I came up to strangers and said something I could not know about them, and they wondered how. On the last day of our seminar, we were awaited by a special meditation temple of the soul with a short briefing beforehand. Ram asked each of us to clearly formulate a question we needed an answer to. When you get there, pay attention to the details. Who will meet you? Perhaps a relative or a friend, an elder or an angel, or maybe no one. It's different for everyone. Take a look around. What does your temple, or the place you will end up, look like? Someone ends up in a maze, someone is in a castle. Try to go around it all, entirely. Go through all the doors. Since the answer to your question is hiding behind one of them, if a door is closed, find the key and open it. Music without mantras will play during this meditation. I will guide you to the front door and leave you alone. I will warn you when time is running out so that you can return on time. One more request or advice. There are a little fewer of us now than usual, so it will be more difficult, but still, if any of you can, go to the Library of the Universe. Try it. Will it work? Ask the elder or the guardian to show you a book. Open it and try to read. There will be some advice there, perhaps the answer to your question. It happens that a book is written in an unknown language. Try to feel what it's about. Sometimes the guardian transmits information through you to me. As you leave there, don't forget to thank everyone you have met. The music started playing. We closed our eyes. Unlike previous meditations, we did not lie down, we were standing. I had never thought that it was possible to meditate while standing, and worse, I could not imagine that temple of my soul. Ram guided us to heavens, and I suddenly saw it, a silver white and pyramid-shaped crystal, dazzling, or rather, almost blinding with its radiance, through the center of which a powerful flow of energy was pouring in a vertical direction. The temple was located in the blue-black sky so far that the earth was invisible at all there. I came up to the front door. Ram asked us to recite prayers we knew, or just pray somehow with the soul, and she left everyone alone with one's temple. Being scared to enter it, I still opened the door and stepped inside. I looked around, not a soul. The architecture of the outer part of the temple did not correspond to the inside at all, as if they were two different buildings. The two-story house had the shape of a cross, formed by two corridors intersecting at right angles. The first thing that caught my eye was the absence of a ceiling and roof, just a starry sky above my head. However, there was no need for a roof there, no rain, no snow either, a completely different world. It was even great without any roof, since the whole universe lived in my temple of the soul. The walls were whitewashed, like village houses on the outside. There were my paintings and pots of beautiful flowers on the walls and a lot of doors along the walls on both floors. The floor, doors and beams were wooden, dark brown. The temple was very light, despite the absence of a light source and the presence of the blue-black sky above. A wooden staircase, located to the right of the front door, led to the upper floor. It seemed unrealistic to go through all the doors of the temple, but I went up and entered the first 4 rooms on the left. No one, although in one of them I found several coffin lids. I helplessly dropped my hands, sat down on the stairs and wept. Even there, in my own little house, I was completely alone. Having gone down, I noticed a foggy niche with climbing green plants opposite the front door and decided to see what was there. Getting closer and closer, I suddenly saw him writing something at a wooden table with old books on it, without a headdress, but in green robes embroidered with gold, the typical attire of clergy for Trinity. Having noticed me, he smiled, as he had done for 5 years when I sang in the children's church choir. The patriarch was not surprised by my appearance, as if he had known that I would have come. I cried from the unexpected joy of our meeting. The patriarch looked alive and absolutely healthy, although he had left Earth exactly a month before. I looked into his eyes and asked mentally, why is everything like this? Why do I have such life? For what? What for? Why does not anyone love me? I want that man to. The patriarch answered me with eyes filled with universal love. You know everything yourself. Heaven loves you. But why? I asked again, and he pointed with his gaze at the books on the table, saying, and you write too. So that I write. The patriarch nodded and handed me an open book with words in Sanskrit. I got surprised. Patriarch and Sanskrit. I did not understand anything, but he told me to go to my relatives and showed me exactly which door on the upper floor I needed. They all really gathered there. Both grandmothers and their sisters, grandfather, mom and dad, aunt and uncle. I recognized each of them in the foggy outlines of astral bodies and was glad to meet them. Nobody asked me questions. Everything is known in heavens about everyone living on earth. Only the aunt asked how her youngest daughter was doing. I replied that everything was fine. There was no pain left in me. I let them go a long time before, and the other day, I had talked with my mom in the mountains and danced with the monks. Suddenly I remembered about the Library of the Universe and returned to the patriarch asking to take me to it. The patriarch rose from the table and led me along the left corridor of the ground floor. a far door of which was the entrance to the library. We walked through several halls, each was huge. We met people along the way. They came there to find their books and paid no attention to us. The walls were lined with bookshelves from floor to ceiling, and countless shelving flanked the central passage that connected the endless chain of halls. Everything was there. I looked around in confusion. I was told to find a book or books that would answer my question. The patriarch smiled and led me to the bookshelves in the center of the hall, looked at me carefully, reached out with his hand to the top shelf, took out and handed me my first two books, one of which titled On the Road to Heaven, and the title of the second had been made up of three names, two great spellcasters of the Silver Age and my own, Marina, Anna, Alexandra. I asked if I could get some other book by myself. He nodded. I walked to the far corner of the hall, took a ladder and climbed to the top shelf. My hand was drawn to an old book of dark green color with no title on the spine. I pulled it out and read the single word engraved on the cover in gold letters, Word. You have 3 minutes left, came the voice of Ram. I put the book back. Having gone down, I ran into a famous priest. He smiled at me. He is probably looking for some information here too, I thought, wondering if he was still alive. Say goodbye, go to the door you entered the temple through. I stood at the front door. The eyes of the patriarch, as many years before, emanated goodness and love. I thanked him. Mine were looking at me from the upper floor and waving their ghostly hands. Open the door, come out. I opened the door. The patriarch blessed me at parting. Close the door behind you, turn your back to it. After a couple of minutes I opened my eyes on earth.